Alright, imagine the lights come up and it's just me, standing center stage, hands in pockets, shrugging a little because that's what I do when people make a big deal out of things. And I say, so HBO was going to make this show about my early life and the beginnings of SpaceX, right? A big dramatic series, explosions, rocket failures, rocket successes, people yelling, people muttering, people saying, Elon, that's impossible, and me replying, well, we're doing it anyway. And they were gearing up, gathering writers, probably figuring out how many times they could have an actor playing me stare dramatically out at a launch pad at sunset. And then something happened. Something I've gotten used to. Media blowback, they call it. Like the rumble of a rocket before it actually takes off. Except instead of fire and plasma, you get headlines and hand-wringing and a whole lot of people saying a whole lot of things about me. And suddenly the project is shelved, paused, discontinued, whatever euphemism you prefer. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's interesting. Because usually when rockets are cancelled, it's because they explode. Not because people on the internet argue about whether or not you're too polarizing for prestige television. I walk a few steps, imaginary spotlight following, and continue. Look, I've been called polarizing since before a Falcon 1 ever cleared the tower, since before anyone thought electric cars would be anything more than golf carts with bigger batteries, since PayPal was still trying to figure out how to keep people from sending money to Nigerian princes. And suddenly my life story is considered too, spicy, controversial, complicated, welcome to humanity. I mean, the early days of SpaceX weren't exactly a calm stroll through a meadow. We had rockets exploding like it was their day job. We had engineers sleeping on warehouse floors. We had meetings where someone said, we are actually out of money. And I said, well, we can't be, because we have to make orbit. If that isn't dramatic television, I don't know what is. I shrug, glance at imaginary camera. But apparently the concern was that people might not know what to make of me. That some viewers might love it, and others might hate it, and others might watch the whole thing only to tweet, I don't like him, but that explosion was awesome. And Hollywood doesn't like confusion. Hollywood likes neat categories. Hero, villain, anti-hero, who broods next to a window, and I guess I don't fit cleanly into any of the boxes. Or maybe they just thought I'd tweet about it too much. Hard to say. I lean forward like I'm telling a secret. The funny thing is, if they had made the show, they'd have found out the truth is more chaotic and more boring and more unbelievable than any screenplay. The truth is, I didn't start SpaceX to be a character. I started it because I thought humanity needed to be multiplanetary if we were going to deal with whatever the universe throws at us. And the early days weren't glamorous. It was me and a bunch of brilliant maniacs trying to make a tube of metal successfully explode upward instead of downward. We weren't thinking about prestige TV, we were thinking, can we actually build this thing? And then, why is it leaking? And then, why is it leaking again? And then, okay, who tightened this valve? Whoever did it, don't do that again. That's the real story. That's the story that would have made the show interesting. I pace again, gesturing. But hey, HBO decides to cancel the series, and people act like it's some huge moment. For me, it's Tuesday. Things get canceled all the time. Rockets get canceled, deals get canceled, meetings get canceled because someone spilled coffee into a flight computer, and we all have to go fix it. The cancellation is the least dramatic part. The dramatic part was what happened back then, when we were fighting gravity, physics, budgets, skepticism, the occasional fire, and our own exhaustion. The dramatic part was launching Falcon 1 again and again until it finally reached orbit, and we all lost our minds cheering because we had done something absurd and improbable and absolutely necessary. That's the show I would have watched. I stop, center stage again, softer voice. But you know what? I don't need a TV series to tell that story. I tell it every time I look at a rocket on the pad. I tell it every time Starship flies. I tell it in every engineer who joins, because they want to do something bigger than themselves. And maybe someday someone will make a series about it, maybe not. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we keep building, keep trying, keep pushing, because that's the real plot line. And it's still running. No cancellation notice yet. I take a breath, give a little half smile. Fade to black, roll credits, play dramatic rocket audio, maybe throw in a slow motion launch shot if the budget allows. So imagine, the lights come back up and I'm sitting in some old metal chair in a giant empty hangar, starship pieces in the background like sleeping dragons. And I say, you know, after that whole HBO saga, people kept asking me, Elon, aren't you upset? Aren't you annoyed they canceled the show? And I kept thinking, upset about what exactly? Upset that the world won't get to see some actor stare dramatically into the horizon while soft piano music plays. Upset that the writers won't get to debate whether to include the time I slept under my desk so I could wake up early enough to yell at a valve. I mean, look, if they really wanted a dramatic scene, they could have shown in the moment I realized we only had enough money for one more Falcon 1 launch. One more. Imagine the camera close on my face, everyone waiting to see if I'd say, let's do it, or we're shutting down. But instead of that tension, we get a news headline saying the series is shelved because apparently I caused too many arguments at dinner tables. I mean, if a show about rockets exploding can't survive turbulence, that's ironic even by my standards. I stand up, pacing between imaginary rocket hardware and waving my hands. But the thing is, documentaries, series, dramas, they always want to make it look clean. They want the 3-act structure, the calm before the storm, the emotional epiphany, and that's not how it went. Real life doesn't have acts. Real life is you standing on a launch pad at 2 a.m, eating cold pizza, arguing with 3 engineers about why a guidance computer is behaving like it's possessed. And someone says, we can fix this, and someone else says, we definitely cannot fix this. And I say, we're fixing it. And somehow, after enough stubbornness and caffeine, we do. Try fitting that into a TV script without making it look like chaos. Spoiler alert, it was chaos. I laugh a little, shake my head, keep walking. And then there's the whole polarizing thing, which, honestly, I find weirdly amusing. As if history's big projects were ever built by people everyone universally adored. You think the Saturn V had perfect Yelp reviews? You think the internet launched without anyone saying, this thing will never work and also it's ruining civilization? Humanity doesn't make progress by committee approval. It makes progress by someone somewhere saying, this is worth doing, and pushing forward even while half the world is yelling and the other half is shrugging. I stop, point at where a rocket would be. That's why I don't mind if a show gets cancelled. SpaceX wasn't founded to create a brand or a myth or a prestige series. It was founded because I thought human beings need to survive long term, and that requires leaving Earth. And the early days, if you really want the truth, they were raw, not glamorous, not scripted, not safe. We were launching rockets from a tiny island with nothing but determination, duct tape, metaphorically mostly, and a belief that things break before they work. Those were years of frustration, obsession, fear, hope, and stubborn resolve. No studio cancellation can rewrite that. I turn back to the imaginary audience, talking faster now. The funny part is, every time something like this happens, I end up more motivated. Call it spite, call it ambition, call it stubborn South African childhood logic. But I don't like leaving things half finished. So when Falcon 1 finally reached orbit after 3 failures, it wasn't a Hollywood triumph moment. It wasn't slow motion with soaring music. It was me staring at the computer screen thinking, holy, okay, wow, we actually did it. And then the entire hangar erupted like someone detonated a joy bomb. People crying, people yelling, people hugging each other like we just survived a natural disaster. Because in a way, we had. I pace again, faster. You can't script that. You can fake it maybe, with good actors and dramatic lighting, but the real thing is messy and loud and insane and beautiful. And whether a network wants to air that or not doesn't change the fact that it happened. And more importantly, it doesn't change the fact that we're still doing it. We're still building bigger rockets, still aiming for Mars, still pushing humanity forward, inch by stubborn inch. So, if HBO wants to reboot the idea someday, cool. If not, also cool. I don't need a series. I have a launch manifest. I stop, breathe, lift my chin. Fade out again, maybe this time with the hum of welding torches and the rumble of a distant engine test. Real sound. The kind you can't cancel.